Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at our ProLink Technology Live 2021 event. I am going to be showing you some SmartDox mapping guidance today. If you're unfamiliar with SmartDox, this will be a good overview to show you some of the things you can do when you're mapping templates. And if you're already a pro, this might show you some things that you've never seen before. Mostly we're going to start going through our slides that we've presented. I'm going to kind of go over the functionality in some of the sections, and then I'll actually show you a live version of how to map things. So the first lesson we're going to go through is the SmartDox mapping guidance itself. And then after we're done with that part of the lesson, we'll go through some common use cases and show you how to handle some different areas of our templates as far as tying things together and creating multiple records. So after we get done with all the fun stuff we're going to do today, you will know how to switch your environments between UAT and production, which some of you mostly do a lot of your work in prod, but I do know that when you're creating templates, being able to practice map in UAT and use test data is very important. We have the search functionality if you're looking for specific fields to map that allows you to look at each node and search for a name of a field that you're looking for. The mass mapper is a lifesaver when it comes to uploading data and creating templates. If you haven't used that before, I'm going to kind of hold your hand and walk you through that. How ProLinkHFA pick lists work within a SmartDox. How to version your templates so you don't get them messed up, you don't use an old template. How to use protection in your SmartDox template. How you figure out which schema you want to use. You have, different clients have different modules. For example, you may not have dev. You may just need to use TC. You may be able to use dev and TC together interchangeably. You may be using just portfolio property and items on there, or maybe dev draws. So we'll kind of go over all the different schemas that you have to choose from. And the last thing is how to detach a template that has been mistakenly attached to an object in the system. This is something I know we have all done. I like to say that once you get a document and you attach it to a property or a record in the system, that it's married. So then after you do that, if you accidentally do that, we have to divorce them so you get your blank template back. So we'll discuss what to do in that situation when and if it happens to you. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to switch environments between UNT and production. This is assuming that you do have ProLink installed, you do have it available in Excel. And how do you know if you have it installed? When you open your Excel spreadsheets, you are going to see a tab called ProLink, and that's how you know you have it installed. Most of you should have that installed, and if you don't, you should probably talk to whoever in your agency builds out software. Most of you know that whenever we have a SmartDox update, we upload that to user group Procore and Work Center for any updates that you would need. So when you first go in here and you want to map your data to a specific environment, be it prod or UAT, the first thing you do is go to the About, the ProLink tab, and click About ProLink. Now, when you click About ProLink, this little modal is going to come up. It's going to show you which version of SmartDox that you have. You can verify with what's out in user group files to see if you have the most current add-in, if you do not. And then it's going to show you which environment that you're connected to. In this example, I am connected to our FA demo UAT. And you probably, each agency just has like a UAT or a production environment to choose from. Unlike us, we have every environment imaginable to choose from. So once you click on the SmartDox image, it's going to bring up the password modal. And the password for this is ASC, Alpha Sierra Charlie. And so once you enter that password and you click OK, then your Configure SmartDox modal will open. And this is where you get your list of default connections. And as I said before, this is from our testing environment. So you can see that we have many, many, many options in here. For you, for example, if you are Idaho and you wanted to map to prod, you would select your IHFA prod environment. Now, if you're going to be doing mass mapping, something else you want to do is make sure that the Enable Mass Mapping button is selected right there. And once you have your environment and that's selected, you will click OK. At this point, we have pointed SmartDox into the direction of your desired environment. Now, once you have your Excel open and you have logged in, if you need to, and you have decided you're going to map, you'll go to ProLink and you'll click Map Fields. Now, when you do Map Fields, it's going to ask you to save your document before you do anything. At that point, it will make you enter a file name to save it to your local computer before it will let you map anything. So once you've done that, and the mapper, this is what we call the mapper, comes up, you'll have the option to select a node. And in this example, we have portfolio properties as the parent node, and to search for a value that you want. Like if you want to, for whatever reason, map every single name field on the property, you can do that. And this just allows you to, kind of isolate the amount of results you get when you're looking for a particular field for a node that has a lot of fields like portfolio properties. And just as a quick reminder, we know that there are certain fields in ProLink that are get only, that you can't do both. And those are always kind of, when you first look for it, they're always going to be listed in the direction. It will also tell you it's a pick list. Now, to use the mass mapper, this is kind of one of those mysterious things that we always talk about, and it's hard to explain. So hopefully this is going to give you a leg up on being able to utilize this very powerful tool, which a lot of us have used. And I know I've worked with many of you on, creating your properties with your buildings and having to upload units to a building. And nobody wants to do that manually. So my example for the mass mapper is going to be for portfolios, buildings, and units. So when you have your mapper open, what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to sequence items. And kind of how we got to this point, I had opened a document. I had decided to map. It's the portfolio properties schema. And then since buildings is a child of locations, I had selected locations and added the locations group under portfolio properties. And then I went to buildings. I added the buildings group under locations. And then I added one unit. And as you can see, it says sequence 1. Now, the sequences, let me kind of talk about this real quick, and in case you're not clear on it. Basically, if you have like the first location created on a property is going to be your first sequence and your first record. Your first building is going to be your first sequence because it's your first record. This will come into play when you are mapping multiple buildings. And we'll go over that after I get through these slides. So once you have, I've got my property, I got my locations, my buildings. Now I want to add units. All you have to do is click on units and click add group. And it's going to add one unit. And at that point, when you right click on it, it's going to allow you to duplicate the group. So this means that you get to duplicate the amount of units that you want on the building. It will bring up the sequence duplicator modal, and it shows you which element you're mapping to. And it's going to ask you for how many iterations you want. And by iterations, it means records. So let's say for this particular mapping document, we are going to map 10 units to this building. So once you click enter the amount of 10 and click OK, it's going to map out all those units for you. And they're going to show up down there. And you'll be like, oh, look, so now I can map all the units. Now, how do you want to populate those? For all the units in this particular example, some of you know that in order to create a record from SmartDox, you have to, at the very least, map and send the required fields to get the record to create in the back office in ProLinkHFA. So for this particular scenario, we're going to click on the first unit, and then we're going to go find which field we want to map first. And in this scenario, it's going to be unit number, because anybody who has seen any of my templates know that it's unit number, bedrooms, square foot, and is active. So once you click on unit number, you have to make sure your first sequence is selected. You have to make sure it's selected correctly on the Excel worksheet, which I will go through when I do the live demo of this. Click on unit number. Then you will right click on Mass Mapper, and click the mass mapper. And here's a nice reminder, verify the first cell that you want to map to where you want that unit number to be input is what you have selected on the Excel spreadsheet. So once you right click on mass mapper, it's going to bring up your sequence mapper modal. So if you want 10 unit numbers to be mapped, it will automatically see how many you have down there. And it will say, like, for example, this would have auto-populated with 10. And we're just going to do one step because I think entering steps and how that works is another SmartDox class for perhaps next user group next year. It'll tell you want 10, and then it'll hit OK. So what this is going to do is going to map the unit number 10 times to all the sequences that you have already duplicated down here. And what that's going to look like is you're going to see your unit number. You had this right here selected when you decided to do the mass mapping, and it's gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can know which sequence number it is by hovering over the little red caret, which I'll go over in the live demo. So once you do that, you can go back up and select units and then like go to your next field that you're going to map, like bedroom. And again, I will kind of review this during the live demo, which we're going to do now. So let me bring up my spreadsheet over here. This is just kind of a template I've made. And again, this might look familiar to all of you. I don't have anything mapped on here yet because I wanted to make sure that we walked through this demo and you could see what's on the slideshow in action. So I'm going to pretty much live view everything we just did. I'm going to bring up my About ProLink window, which of course it wants to be difficult today because it has an audience. It's like a toddler. So type in the password, which we said was ASC, Alpha Sierra Charlie, hit OK. It's going to ask me which environment I'm going to. As you can see, WIDA will be very happy to know that I've been testing things for them to review some things. For this example, I'm going to select HFA Demo Prod because that's where I have some data set up to show you. Now, the first thing I want to do now that I've done that is, since this is a template, and I do this all the time, since I know that I have a template accessed, before I do any mapping at all, I want to save it, just to be safe. So this way you can map multiple templates as you go along. If you get a template to a place that you like, and you save a version of it because you want to make changes later, but you're afraid you're going to undo all the good that you did in the previous one, that's an option. So I'm going to select where I'm going to start for this particular template is just putting basic information about the property. So, you want to have that kind of name up there so you know exactly what you're working with. Now, this is where I'm going to pick the schema. And we'll kind of talk about, some of the schemas later, but I'm going to select portfolio property. So once I do that, it will eventually pop up the mapping window. And for this particular scenario, all I want to do right here is put in the HFA number. So to make life easier, I'm just going to type in HFA. It's going to bring up the HFA number. I have to select get because it's a get only field, and then I'll map it there. So now you can see that I have mapped the HFA number to there, and now we'll just run through and do property name. Property. I'll map that in that box. Now we have to add the building nodes because in order to get the BEN, we obviously have to have the building nodes. And before we do that, we have to map locations because, as we discussed, it goes portfolio property, locations, and then buildings. So let me add location. And then I'm going to click the expand button next to locations to add my building. So before I do anything else, I want to add some information about my building. Now, when you first create or do your units, you may or may not have your bin in there. So when we map this, it's just going to be informational. All the building information that we map in this scenario is going to be get only, because the idea is that you would already have your buildings created before you add the units. And I am looking for light tech bin. That's just going to be a get only field. Building name. I'm going to make this get only for our purposes today. Address 1, get, map. And is the building active? Because sometimes this does trip us up. This way you'll at least know and verify that it's active. You can still add units even if the building isn't active. When it comes time to actually, you know, pull in tenant events and do compliance reviews, you're going to have that data. So here we've got that information mapped. Now, in this particular scenario, I have 3 buildings, and there's a lot of properties out there for all of you that's going to have more than 1 building. The property I have created in the back office already has 3 buildings. So what I want to do is I want to add another building because I have 3. So I'm going to add the group twice. Whoops. It will yell at you if you click on the wrong node. So buildings. So according to this, I have 3 buildings. Now, I'm going to quickly just go through and map the building name for each of these buildings just for time's sake. It will still be a get. And in my color coding, what I do, and you can, I love color coding. It makes life very easy. All my blue fields here are get fields when I map them, and the green fields are both fields. So find whatever way you can, you know, keep track of it in your head. You can just put a little legend over here that lets you know this is get, this is send, or this is both. And then I want to map the building name for number 3. Here's my 3rd sequence of a building. I'm going to type in name and map that there. Now you can, of course, go in and map all the information you want. So now it's come time to add the units and to do our mass mapping with the units. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the group unit to building 1. Now it's very important to make sure that you do have the correct node selected when you want to add things below them, so you don't get confused later. And now I have all the units. I'm going to go ahead and click over here because I know what this is going to be. And I'm going to duplicate the group. And I'm going to do 10 units. And it's going to duplicate. As you can see, let me make my mapper a little bigger so you can see some more of this. So now we have 10 units. We have the framework for what we need to do. Now we're actually going to map the fields that will be sending and receiving data. So the first one I want to do, I have my first unit. And if you wanted to, you could just, you know, add the caption of which unit number it is, just so you can keep it straight, whatever makes it easy for you. Because a lot of times we don't get this right the first time. And we have to start over or unmap things. Perfectly acceptable, perfectly normal. So this is where I want my first unit sequence to go. So I'll type in unit number. I'm going to click on that. Now, before I do anything, and this is from experience, make sure you have both selected at this point when you know it's going to be a both field. So I've got unit 1 selected, and I just messed up what I did. Everybody does this. Or maybe it is just me, I'm not sure. So once I've selected that and I have that selected and I have the unit number selected, I'm going to right click on the map button before I do anything. That's where I click Mass Mapper. And when you do that, you want to click on units because it's going to know, okay, well, you have 10 sequences, you have 10 iterations. I assume that you want me to do this 10 times. And yes, we do. So once I click OK, they're all going to map. So then we want to do the same thing for bedrooms. Make sure you clicked on the first unit sequence. Make sure you're clicked in the correct cell for bedrooms. Then you'll click on the bedroom, which is going to be a pick list. Right click, Mass Mapper, again, iterations. It's going to pull in 10, and there they go. And while I go through this again, and you can just watch me doing the square footage, I'm not going to repeat all the steps. I know we've had some people who sometimes like to copy paste within a SmartDox. That is not a good idea. And once we get done with this, I'm going to show you why. And this involves like the document knowing exactly where everything is sequenced and what order it's supposed to be in. Some of you also may remember that we added is active because at one point we were adding units and they weren't marking them as active on create like they do in the system. And so that was causing issues with tenant events. So mass mapper 10. So now I have the first building mapped. Now, if I want to map the second building, it'll be kind of the same situation. This will take about this will take about 5 or 10 minutes to go through. But before we start doing this part, I want to go back over here. Now, when you see the little red caret, this is going to tell you exactly what this particular field is mapped to, which sequence. And I realize if I point, you can't see me, but I'm still going to point. It will say sequence 1, buildings, sequence 1, unit, sequence 1. So this is going to be the first unit on building 1. Now, if I copied and pasted this over like this, and I do this, it's still going to map to the same sequence, which is why we don't copy and paste. Because when you're copying and pasting these fields, you're copying and pasting the sequences, and you don't want to do that because that's going to mess you up. And I think we all have stories about that. So I just undid what I did. You can, if you need to like copy data, there's a way to do that. You can manually input the data, but you don't want to copy map fields thinking that, oh, okay, well, this will be for building 2 and this will be for building 3, because it's not going to work out the way you want it to, I promise. So for this one, I will add the units, and we'll do the same thing we did previously. We'll duplicate the group. We're going to duplicate 10 times. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did in the previous node. Unit number, both. Make sure I have everything selected. I do, that's correct. Mass mapper, building 2, sequence 1 on building 2, gonna map that 10 times. Go back up, bedroom, map, units, 10. Now I learned by repetition, and once I know how to do something really quickly, I do it really quickly, which is why sometimes I have been able to provide templates relatively easily. I believe there's probably ways to make this even faster than I've done it. And it's my goal to find out what those are. Now, if you mess something up and you map it in the wrong place, if you're not aware, you can always unmap. And I'll kind of show you real quick how there's a couple of ways to unmap. We'll just kind of take a look at that. Okay, now see, I almost messed up because I did not have myself in the active box, because that's what I'm doing next. So you want to make sure that you have it where you want it to start. There we are, back to 10. Now, if you do kind of mess up and map it in the incorrect place, you know, if you've like, let's say you accidentally put all your active checkboxes down here and you didn't want to do that. What you can do is you can go over into the mapped fields tab, and then you can be like, oh, okay, so I messed up the active. It's going to tell you, you know, okay, well, so here's building 1 and all these units is active, and oh, okay, I mapped those. We're going to pretend I mapped these incorrectly. And in order to unmap those and map those again, I can see here on sequence 2 is active. I can select all those little fields that I have just mapped in here and click unmap. And when I click unmap, you're going to see the little red carets go away. and they're gone. But I did do it right the first time. And now I can go back in here and click is active one more time and remap them. And it's fine because I had unmapped them. And they'll go right back to where they're supposed to be. A little bit slower because I think they're a little angry. Now I'm gonna, well, apologies for this taking on a little bit longer than I thought. So I'm not going to map the third one, but we'll just kind of show you what it looks like when you pull in 2 buildings and you want to add the units when this finishes. Now, after you've created a template, let's say you've created a template, you've had, you have a 2-building template that's got 100 units. Then you want to go and it's like, you know what, I want to update this template. I want to add another building. I want to add another, 100 units. You can make those updates to an existing template if you want. Again, it just comes down to making sure that you are saving and versioning your templates to keep them straight and you don't get confused about which one you're using. So we have this particular template mapped for 2 buildings and 1 property. But let me go, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint real quick and talk about pick lists real quickly. So in this example, what we have is we do have bedrooms. That's the only pick list we have mapped in this particular template. And every now and then we add a new value to a pick list. Now those get updated automatically in ProLinkHFA. But every now and then, if you know that pick list values have been updated, you can go to a template and click refresh drop downs. And it's going to look at whatever environment that you have your SmartDox pointed to. And it's going to go through and cycle through all the drop downs and populate the fields or update your pick list with new fields that may have been added or fields that may have been removed. Yeah, you should do that at least annually or anytime pick lists are updated. We talked about versioning your templates. So here's an example of one where I put in a version. That's simple. We can go back over here to what we have and we could a row and just say version 1, and then you can put like the date. So like right now I'm doing this on the 26th. That's how you know what version it is. You can keep track of that if you have one person who's going to be responsible for templates and updating them and keeping them in one place. Sometimes in Procorum, if you have uploaded a template for everybody in your agency to use, it'll have a version under the file. And if you want to replace that version, you can do that. And Procorum's automatically going to let you download the most recent version of the file. If you keep them internally, just updating them with this information, even in your name, which I should probably do right here because I'm about to do a get. That way, you know which version you're using when you open your template, in case things get confusing later. And your drop downs, like I said, this is the only one here, and it does contain the most recent value we added, which I believe was SRO. And it is, I know it's kind of hard to keep track of those, but since we do have 2 ways to do it, it should be more helpful. But yeah, anytime someone makes an update, just make a note. You can put just a tab in the spreadsheet saying these are the updates we made. This is the date we made them. This is what the difference is. Just so everybody is on the same page, literally, when it comes to the most recent SmartDox template. How you use protection throughout your workbook. We recommend you use SmartDox protection instead of Excel protection. This is for internally, the people who are responsible for your SmartDox templates and who's going to maintain the integrity of which version is which or what gets changed, because you don't want anybody going in there and messing with what you worked so hard to map. You have the option of creating a password to protect the sheet and protect the workbook. And this will not allow people to change anything that you have mapped. And passwords up to you, who you share it with is up to you. So you should lock the editable fillable fields, or those should be unlocked. Everything else should be locked. Protect the workbook, then unlock fillable fields. In some cases, you might need to allow for addition of rows, which I believe you can select down there. But this is something you have access to with the ProLink tab. Determining the appropriate schema to use. So you have a root schema versus child schema. And as you can see here, we have several schemas that kind of interact with each other, like portfolio property is generally an asset management thing, and they do have options under there if you have annual financials or audits and things like that. Instead of tying those to one portfolio property, you can just do the annual financials portion of portfolio property and map a schema that way. Same thing with inspections. You don't have to have the whole kit and caboodle of portfolio property to be able to create a document that is specific to inspections. Obviously, you can still pull in the property related information, but it's going to be based on inspections rather than the property information. We have all sorts of other options down here, standardized financial tax credit deals. Most of you are familiar with a lot of templates on here. For Dev, I know having Dev draws as a new schema was a happy thing for a lot of people. So depending on what you want to do, finding the most sensical schema is your first step in deciding how you're going to map out your template if it's something everyone's going to use. Like for an inspection form, if there's going to be one a year, or for one for each property every year, you can map all the data to that, send that out with a workflow, or send it out to Procorum for anybody who's doing the inspections to fill out and send back to you, and you can just zip them on up to ProLink. The child will let you start at the lower level, so you don't have to use sequences. That was the other thing about using anything that's tied to like a bigger parent object. Like here we have development, dev draws. You can just get the dev draw schema and not have to use the entire development one. It can be tricky. So we added recently, some of you are familiar with allowing a delete on SmartDocs send, because sometimes the way some of our schemas are set up, and I think I'm thinking about financing sources and TC deals, when we populate the data, it's kind of overriding, or it's not deleting something it should, and it's not going the correct place. So we added this allow delete on SmartDocs send in order to avoid that entire thing. So when you are updating a template and populating it, it's sending it to the correct place. You're not getting errors saying, we can't do this. This field is not valid, or any other of those fun SmartDocs errors that we like to interpret. So if you want to do that, what it's going to do, it's going to automatically delete any existing records and insert new data from the file being sent. This way you don't have to manually delete all those records. And it does it for these nodes specifically. And this will be, you'll have access to this PowerPoint when we're done if you have further questions. How to detach a template that has been mistakenly attached to an item. It does happen. And yes, we can help you. This is why we encourage you to make backups of your templates and backups of your templates and backups of your templates. I have like templates in 4 different areas because inevitably I will hit a get and tie it to a record and be like, I did not mean to do that, before I rename the file and saved it correctly. Now, if you need any help doing this, just put in a Zendesk ticket and attach the file, and we will wave a magic wand and make it all better. So then you don't have to, pull a Chandler or something of that nature. All right, so now we're going to go to SmartDocs use cases, and we're going to teach you how to map UDFs, map a dev and TC deal together. I'm going to go back to that template that I was working on earlier so we can kind of go through that live. So how to map UDFs. A lot of you have enjoyed using UDFs on various objects. We've been adding, I feel like we've added them to quite a few objects, parent objects, over the past couple of years. For example, we're going to use dev user-defined fields for our example here. So the correct schema that you want to do, it would be obviously the dev deal schema, which is just called development in your dropdown. And when you click on the user-defined fields node, you can add that to your dev deals parent node. And then it's going to bring up all the UDFs that you have created for the particular dev deal. Now, depending on how you set up your UDFs, if you have like a category, it's going to have the category in front of the name of the field. That does help you keep them straight in data views and any templates that you may have, et cetera, et cetera. And if you have to look for a specific one, it's going to, you can just do the search function. Like you just want acquisition, just go in and type acquisition. It will bring up any UDF that says acquisition. How to map a dev and TC deal together. So you have to determine which deal type is most prevalent. So if you want to do like you already have an existing TC deal and you want to create a dev deal with it, or vice versa, you could update a template this way. Like here's the information I have. And in this example, we've made dev deal the parent deal. And you will notice when you pick a development deal or a TC deal that you're going to have for dev associated TC deal, and for TC you would have associated dev deal. This basically takes like the dev nodes and brings in not all, but a lot of the information you would need in order to tie those together. And if you want to, I know a lot of our templates do have like, if we have formulas and things like that, you can use a mapping sheet that can be hidden from anybody who's going to be sending the template to update and populate with information they're going to send back to you to send back up to the system. A lot of times we'll have that ProLink mapping tab where you have things that are mapped because they depend on formulas elsewhere in your template and your spreadsheet. So I think that's where a lot of tying the TC and dev deal together is helpful. Let's see, FAQs, frequently asked questions. Allow delete on SmartDoc send. I think we first brought it up last year because it was a beta item, but I believe most of you have used it. If you need any more clarification or want to walk through exactly what it's doing, you can reach out to myself, you can reach out to Leslie, and we'll submit a Zendesk ticket. We'll be happy to help you. Using sequences, blank records in a map template will not create blank records in ProLinkHFA on send. So if you have a template that's got one building and 1,000 units, which by the way, I'm just going to make a little, put a pin in this one. You can only duplicate 200 groups at a time. You can only map 200 iterations at a time. You have to go back and do it repeatedly. Just in case you ever wonder why you can't put in more than 200, that's just a limitation because it can get kind of squirrely if you do more than that. But if you have a template, like I said, with 1,000 units and you only map 500, that's fine. I mean, as long as you don't have rogue data in the units that you don't want to create, otherwise it will be like all these are required. So you can just fill in 50 units on a 1,000 unit template. It's not going to create blank records for you. Draws. We created the dev draw schema to make draws easier with SmartDocs. I know that BHDA and OHCS has experience with dev draws and will have an opinion on where it makes it easier. I believe the answer is yes. They can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If you have any questions, please add those to the chat or email me. This particular session has been pre-recorded. So while this is playing, I will be answering any questions that you put into the chat. And if I can't answer them during the chat, I will write them down and get back to you later. So now we're going to go back in here and look at this template that we've created and create some data. I'm going to show you. This is a portfolio property that I set up that has 3 buildings. We've got all our basic information in here, and I'm just going to kind of go back over this with you as a refresher in case you haven't created a brand new property with buildings and units and data. So when you first create your property, you know how many total units you're going to have. You should put it here because it's not going to let you create more units than the property will allow, because you will get a validation error and be told that you can't do that. Like, for example, I'll show you here. I know I've kind of gone off a little here. If I put in 40, it's not going to like that. It's like, nope, can't do that. Same thing for buildings. All the total numbers that you put on buildings cannot be more than the location and or property that's associated with. So for the buildings, I have basic building data in here. I don't have a bin yet. I can create that later after I create all these units. And as you can see, we have no units right now. And we're going to change that. So let's say I've just created this. I want to add units to at least 2 of my buildings because I'm waiting on my property owner to get back to me with the rest of the information. I'm sure that never happens to anybody. And the first thing I want to do is do a get. And I have to remember the name. I'm already tied to, oh, okay. This is a good teaching moment. This is a problem a lot of people have seen before. I know I've gotten tickets on this. You're running along, you're doing Excel things, then all of a sudden you get an error. This is something that we are going to work on. It's kind of an Excel limitation. And so we just try to work around it. So what we're going to do in this situation, I have my demo building unit. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close this because it usually happens when you have multiple instances of Excel open. And I don't know if you can see my task manager or not, but let me bring it over here. I Control-Alt-Deleted for that. I'm going to make sure all instances of Excel are gone. Now it's a little slow over here. You go over to details, you want to make sure that your Excel instances are ended. Yes, I want to end Excel. Not forever, just for now. Go back over to processes. I don't see Excel in there, so that's good. So now I can go back and open Excel again. Maybe. And then I can open the demo building unit 1 document that I was just working with. Going to go back to ProLink, hit get, and it should be happier now. So that's how you get around that problem if you have it. Also, entering your correct password is highly recommended at any given moment to make things go a lot more smoothly. So I'm going to do a get on the property that I just overviewed with you with this very Italian name. I can't imagine why I did that. So it's going to populate, it's going to get all the data that is associated. We have the HFA number, the property name, building name, et cetera, et cetera. The building is active. We have building B here. We have building C here. And as I said before, we're not going to worry about this. We're just going to map these. So if you are, let's say you have a owner agent who sent you a list of units for the one building, and they're in perfect order and make perfect sense. Like so, like 101, 102. Those are easy to input because you just type in 101, 102, and then to save yourself in time, which would be even better if it went all the way up to like 300, you just kind of do this. That's just a little Excel trick. And SmartDox mapping is okay with you doing that. That's fine. Same thing with bedrooms. It's like, let's say these are all going to be 1 bedrooms. This is going to be 1 bedroom. And some of you might have even better Excel hacks than I do. I'm just resistant to change in this work, so I don't do anything different. So same thing with square foot, 750, 750. Okay, you know what? All of these are going to be 750. So I'm just going to drag all that down there. And as you can see, you look up these little carets, unit sequence 1, unit sequence 2, units, those haven't changed. So when you're ever worried about you have done something that could have changed the mapping, then you can just look at the carets. It's going to give you the information saying, no, this is good. This is in the right place. Unless, of course, you try to copy and paste, as I showed you previously, to another node. Same thing with true. Whoops. Just do that. Pull it all down. There's that. So this one, let's say this one's just going to be different. And then you have to either manually put that information in or not. Now you could, if you have units and information that are in a document that's not mapped, we're going to find out 100% if you can copy and paste those without messing it up. Nope, you can't. So that answers that question. If someone has a better way to input information that doesn't get rid of the mapping, please let me know. I think someone in our company might be able to tell me that, but these are real world scenarios I know that we all kind of go through on occasion. And any tips and tricks that we can get to make it easier without ruining anything we've done is fantastic. So I'm going to have, oh, these are going to be 2 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms. I'll go crazy and put a 4-bedroom and a 5-bedroom in here. Why not? Do some SROs. I know this probably wouldn't really happen in the real world, but that's what's fun about test data. You can do anything you want. Now, if you mistype something in here, obviously you know that you can go in to ProLinkHFA and change it in case for some reason any information has been put in erroneously. 5,000 square feet, that's a bit much. And then we'll make all these true. Now, of course, this is going very fast because we only have 20 units we have to upload. That's fine. So once you get everything done, you have everything populated, go ahead and hit send. Now, if you have anything in here that's not popular, that's required, SmartDox is going to be nice enough to tell you that. It'll say, you know, required field is not populated. And sometimes they're descriptive, sometimes they're not. And you know, if you've seen them, that sometimes the errors are not helpful at all. And that's when you can put in a Zendesk ticket and we will try to assist you in deciphering what that actually meant. So now we've uploaded and saved this to ProLink. When we go back over here to our property, now we're going to see that the units were populated. And you're going to see that it matches what we entered on the template as far as all the data went in. Now, if you have information, like if you have number of bathrooms, floor, any of these other values here that you populate when you create units, you can add those fields to your template and populate those before you send them if that's a time saver for you. For me, I'm just mapping the required fields for convenience's sake, so it doesn't take up a lot of time. But that's kind of how that works, at least on a buildings and units basis, which again, I know is important when you get a new property that has, I don't know, 50 floors and 2,000 units. I can think of one agency that probably has a property like that. So this way you can get all the data in there. And then if they, you know, it changes, any of the data changes, you get an update from, you know, your property owner that says, hey, all the buildings in, or all the units in building B are now going to be, you know, 202 and 302. If they change the unit numbers, I believe that you can update them. You could do a get, update, and send. Or if they, for some reason, they've added more units, you can do the same thing there. There's no rule about having unique unit numbers. You can have like 3 buildings that have the same unit numbers in them, which is confusing sometimes, but I know there are a lot of properties that do that. But this should make your life easier when you're actually beginning to input data into the system. And let's see where we are. So I think that's all I have for you today. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out, Zendesk, email, phone call, etc. Most of you know that we do have the help information from any screen. I don't think that would be super helpful with SmartDocs mapping, but we do have some SmartDocs help out on our support site, which some of you are familiar with. You know, if you're in the application, you can click on the question mark. It's going to bring up some options for you to review some help text for. Not all the answers are in the help text. We know that Andrea works night and day to try to change that. It's an ongoing process, and as we add new features. We would like to update the help screens as well. But if anything that's not clear, let us know. It's something we can always add to a help screen later. And that is all. Thank you for listening. Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep. Hopefully we learned something about how to make your life easier using SmartDox templates. And if you have any other questions about mass mapping, or just kind of want to, do another walkthrough with a real life example use case that you have, just again, reach out to me or Leslie. We will be happy to help you in any way we can. Thank you and enjoy the rest of our conference.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you everyone for joining the session. I hope you found great value in this session. As a reminder, a copy of Sarah's PowerPoint is available here. You can also come back and watch the recording of the session anytime. Even after the conference is over, you are able to log back onto the platform for the next 90 days to watch any of the session recordings. The session survey is available on the right side of your screen. Please provide any feedback you might have on this particular session. In this survey, there is a place where you can type in any outstanding questions that were not answered during this session. We are about halfway into day 2 of the conference. I hope you're enjoying the conference. By now, I'm sure you're familiar with how Coffee and Bagel works. Please join Coffee and Bagel right now to meet and chat with other attendees. We will be randomly selecting one participant and award a $50 Grubhub gift card. So please participate and spend some time with other attendees. And we'll see you at the next session. Enjoy the break.